Okay, today greenhouse management, we're going to be talking about our greenhouse in general. Now, we have been talking about different structural components over the last couple of weeks as we've been out for the coronavirus. But today, what I really want to highlight is the actual shell of the greenhouse. You know, it's very important to realize what the purpose of a greenhouse is. A greenhouse is basically a microenvironment. It's a microclimate in a sense. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to produce an environment in which our plants can grow at a time of year that it would not normally be growing. So if we are to, for instance, take what we're doing here at Richland, we're trying to start plants at a time of the year that outside they're not really growing. So we started our plants somewhere around Valentine's Day. So we're looking at almost 2 months ago. We started them as plugs. Now that's another discussion for another day, but we traditionally use a lot of plugs in our greenhouse. That's mainly because we're almost guaranteed, or more likely to be guaranteed, live plants. If we plant them with seeds, we have to worry about germination rates, and we do a little bit of that, but for the grand scheme of things, we really try to do a lot of plugs. More input on the beginning, but definitely a higher yield on the end. So you have to play with the economics of the whole thing. But what we're trying to do is we're trying to make or to raise plants in a time of year that they are not growing on the outside, okay? So there's reasons why you're not going to go to Grandma's flower garden on January 21st and find it bare. You're not going to find just big luscious plants. You're not going to see flowers in bloom, unless we've had a crazy mild winter. And so what we do in a greenhouse is to start those plants to get them to a mature size so that we can turn around and plant them later, okay? So now that we're around April and we're down here about the time that people are going to start planting gardens, and people are going to start making sure that they've got their flowers in so they can look all spring-like and have a lot of color to their yard. Those plants had to be started at some point. So that's what a greenhouse really is for. So we get back to this siding deal and kind of where our discussion lands us today. Now, when we chose our greenhouse, we had a lot of options, and the options were really between three major players. First of all, you've got plastic. There are a lot of plastic greenhouses out there, and if you're starting one at your home, that's really not a bad way to go. The perks of plastic, in comparison to other covers, they're relatively cheap, so that's important. If we start to think about how efficient plastic is, it starts to lose a little bit of its appeal, okay? And part of that is because of the can be the quality of the plastic, but really it comes down to how much light is allowed to go through and how much of that energy is trapped inside, okay? So kind of middle range and really more towards the upper end in cost is going to be your polycarbonate. And that's what we have on our greenhouse. When you start looking at a lot of commercial greenhouses, you start to see more and more polycarbonate. Now, polycarbonate is expensive. There's a lot of price that's thrown into the situation on the front end. But if you really start to look at the advantages, Polycarbonate does a good job of allowing that sunlight, that sun energy to go into the greenhouse and to trap it there, okay? Something else that I like about polycarbonate is it's very durable. If you start to think about the fact that plastic, you know, if I'm driving by it with a mower and I sling a rock into the side of my greenhouse, then, you know, what's going to happen? So I want to show you here. This is next to our water faucet. If I can find it here, there's a little ding right here. If you look at this, this is where at some point somebody, it didn't mean to cause a problem, but it was probably me, mowing around our greenhouse, threw a rock into it, okay? Now with plastic, it probably would have torn right through, and then we would have been freaking out on how do we fix this, okay? With polycarbonate, it's double walled. So that means there's two separate layers of polycarbonate material that are joined together by little strips of polycarbonate. So what that allows is it allows it to absorb some impact. One of my fears about putting a greenhouse anywhere around here was baseballs, okay, because we're really close to the baseball building, the baseball facility. And just thinking about the wild, crazy idea that somebody might, you know, be out here just knocking some balls around and one comes and hits the greenhouse. Well, if I have certain types of coverings on my greenhouse, we're going to have some problems. So this polycarbonate allows for it to absorb some impact and still maintain some viability, okay? So we started out with plastic, the cheapest, not a bad option. I'm not trying to say that it's not something that you should look at when doing your greenhouse. But in the end, if you're looking to grow commercially and you're looking for something with some durability, something that's going to have some longevity, polycarbonate is not a bad thing to look at. But again, it depends on your situation. What are you trying to do? What's your market? How much money are you planning on trying to make? And how much money are you trying to invest on the front end, okay? Also, in that those little channels in the middle of that polycarbonate allow for moisture to travel down. So it's actually open on both ends of a piece of polycarbonate. So if I look up here at the top, up there underneath that trim piece, it's open. The polycarbonate, you could actually look down inside of the piece of polycarbonate. If we look down here on the bottom, if I can get down there without falling down and dropping something, you'll see that little silver strip. That little silver strip has little vent places in it, and those vents allow for moisture to come out. So if water got into this panel, it would go down the inside and all the way and come out the bottom, okay? So that's pretty neat. That's a neat feature with polycarbonate. Now again, the expense is there. There's different thicknesses, different qualities of polycarbonate. So really check those as you're starting to do your studying on your greenhouse siding or covering. And really the last of the three that we're going to talk about real fast is your glass. Now glass is great as far as transparency goes. It allows a lot of that solar energy to come into the greenhouse. It's also very good about allowing that to stay trapped inside. Now really here's the question. What's the downside to glass? Well, again, there's two things, and we come back to durability and we come back to cost. So it's going to be usually the most expensive covering for your greenhouse, and that can be an expense that you don't want to incur. But another thing, if you're like us, again, we're out here, we're next to rock, we're next to people throwing around balls practicing. The wrong thing happens, somebody hits it, we've shattered a piece of glass, and that can be really expensive to replace. So we've kind of gone through those three things. I want you to think about, if you were going to build a greenhouse just at your house, what would you use? Okay. And then think about, if I was going to do this maybe as a business, maybe I'm going to start tomato plants. You go and look at the Amish. They've got greenhouses. No offense, they're not as nice as ours, but guess what? They sell quality tomato plants every day of the spring. When they start to when they finish, they're selling tomato plants like nobody's business, okay? So there's some viability there. So you have to ask yourself what you want to do, how much you want it to stick around, the durability, the longevity, and then, how much money can I sink into this thing? And am I going to get a good return? Because if I don't have that profit margin, if I don't have that cash flow, then guess what? It's just going to be an expensive hobby that's going to cost a lot of money and may put me in debt. Now, one thing that I left out that I do want to point out, again, is with longevity and durability, is how long they last. This siding here is rated to last 25 years. So let's put that into perspective. We built this greenhouse about 7 years ago. 7 years ago, I would have been teaching somewhere around 6 years, okay? In Tennessee, you have to teach 30 years, okay? We can get into discussion about that, but technically 30 years to retirement, okay? So in reality, if I taught at Richland High School until I retire, then the person that's teaching ag after me is going to be the person that has to replace this if it's getting to the point that it needs replacing. If we're talking about plastic, it's not going to last that long, usually. We're talking about glass. Glass is going to last that long, but again, can we keep it from getting broken? It's really up to a lot of factors there. So I just want to throw that out there, that this siding is going to be around for many more years to come. It's barely making a dent in how long it's going to be around here at Richland High School, and then somebody's going to have to take it off and redo it at some point. But if we're talking 20, 30 years down the road, again, it proves to be a pretty viable way to do things as far as greenhouse management goes. I hope you guys are having a great day. I hope that you can have an opportunity to get out and to enjoy the beautiful weather we're going to have over the next few days, and still use that social distancing. I also want to give just a brief shout out to all of our FFA members, and I know you guys are wanting to be here and growing plants and doing the plant sale, and I'm just constantly reminded that you guys are not able to be a part of this right now, but that's okay. Life goes on. I do also want to give a shout out to AJ Ray and Rebecca Davis, because today, if we were at state convention, which we would have been, they would have been walking across the stage tonight to receive their plaque for their Tennessee State FFA degree. So congratulations to those guys. We're proud of you. We're proud of all that you've accomplished. We can't wait to see what you do in agriculture, and as you stay committed to agriculture throughout your life. So you guys have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow.